FM.
I'm here with a very special guest. I've tried to get him on for many months before I got here, and he's welcome along Callum Brennan, my co-host from the well, with the mostest really from the D Word. Welcome along, Callum.
Thank you for having me, Pete. It's yeah, like I said, it's been a few months. Been trying to sort this out, so nice to finally be on with you.
Yeah. So first of all, Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Yeah, Merry Christmas to you and anyone else listening who does celebrate it. And if you do not, have a good Thursday.
Absolutely. Um, so before we get into Christmas, step into Christmas. Um,
Mm.
you so tell me a bit about your early life, like growing up. So from 0 to 5, really.
To be fair, I don't actually. Boringly, I don't remember too much in that time period when I was fully sighted. Because yeah, I think for anyone who listens to the D word, they may be aware that yeah, uh, didn't go blind until I was 5, but I think it was kind of a standard middle class childhood, to be honest. Because I am from a middle class family. I don't pick any bones about it. It's funny really because I know, especially when growing up a bit later, like as a teenager, it wasn't cool to be middle class, and I think my younger brother and sister very much would deny that they were. And I don't know, personally, I always found that a bit odd because it's sort of there, like recognize your privilege when you have it, I suppose. Um, but yeah, so I went my childhood home. We moved into when I was 3. Again, not something I really remember, but that's where we continued living. And like I said, my parents still live there to this day. It's which frankly probably did serve me very well when I did become visually impaired. Being in the same place. Of course, it did have changes over the years with extensions such as a conservatory being added. Changes to bathroom, kitchen, but that would have served me well. I know I have memories from I know I had a friend at nursery like everyone did. I remember being at his playing with his X-Men figures, for example. But I remember chasing our Jack Russell puppy at the time around the back garden. But as far as like solid memories, not that many of them, honest. I guess one thing I was born. Apologies for droning on a little bit here, but I was actually, I suppose, a sort of fun fact thing as far as when I was born, it was 6 weeks early. So I know it's not as early as not as early as yourself, Pete.
No,
But
not
yeah,
exactly.
so I was 6, so half the time, 6 weeks early, which then led to what I say to people: my first stint in hospital because I hadn't developed the ability to swallow, so they had to keep me in hospital for not too long. I think it was only a week, up to a week. To feed me sort of through my nose. Yeah, and like I said, that was my first time in a hospital bed.
Oh, Um, and we've talked about it on the email, but I don't think we've gone too much into detail about what exactly happened. So, when you were 5, you became visually
Mm-hmm.
impaired through was it some sort of stroke, some sort of brain tumor, stroke thing?
Yeah, it was a brain tumor. So it was the day after my 5th birthday that, and again, I will say a lot of this stuff I don't actually remember happening. It's why I put a lot of credence into the psychology theory of the brain hiding traumatic experiences from you. Uh, you know, like in the unconscious. So because like I said, I have memories before losing my sight, but during it, I don't. So a lot of this information is through what my parents have told me,
Yeah.
maybe some friends at the time, but also, to be fair, some nightmares that I had when I was younger that I've realized were, you know, based in truth. Um, so yeah, lost my sight day after my fifth birthday. My mum tells me she found me in my bedroom, like in the corner, like early morning, and basically asked me what I was doing. I told her I was trying to find the toilet. And it was like, so she said, so can you see Callum? And I just responded, no, mummy, I don't think so, mummy. Which I appreciate would have been terrifying for a parent to hear in the moment, probably. So got, rushed to hospital. They did a CT on me, and yeah, it was discovered that I had a brain tumor. Uh, I apologize that I'm probably not going to be able to give all the scientific jargon here,
No,
but
that's fine. I would expect
uh,
you to.
no, but it was at the back of the brain, which was kind of fortunate in one sense because it meant, and I'm speeding ahead here, but it was a lot easier, therefore, for them to remove all of it, where some people are not that fortunate. But yeah, so what had happened though is the tumor had caused an upbuild of fluid in the brain, and the fluid then put pressure on the optic nerves, which is then what sort of caused, which are the nerves at the back of the eyes, and they're you know that caused them to sort of go, stuff this, and yeah, just stopped working entirely initially. So yeah, I was totally blind. When this was discovered, got rushed to the nearest hospital with a neurology department, which was, funny enough, Southampton. I realise in saying this, so I grew up in Weymouth, was, born in Dorset County Hospital, which is in Dorchester, the neighbouring town to Weymouth. And yeah, like I said, got rushed off to Southampton. And while there, they did the, I think, standard sort of operations as far as, removing a bit of my skull. They put a shunt in, which is sort of like a device that drains the fluid from the brain. It could go either into your stomach or your lungs. For me, it was the more common one, which goes into the stomach. So yeah, that was to relieve the pressure. And then it was, so like I said, this would have been on the 29th of January. So it was then on the eventually on the 10th, a few other things had happened, but on the 10th, where they operated on me to remove the tumor. And as I said, fortunate enough that they were able to remove all of it. A lot of people aren't as fortunate on that, but it was very much a case of it's, saved my life. My mum's told me, that I say when I had the CT scan and stuff, they didn't have to sedate me or anything because I was completely out of it. Like I was very much. I've often said to people, I wasn't on death's doorstep. I was in death's house, and they kicked me out because yeah, it was very much a case of, like I said, it. My parents at that point, I guess, were very much looking at, you know, one of their children passing. So the fact that that didn't happen was great, and in that sense, sometimes may have been more difficult than others, but especially these days, when I tell people about having a brain tumor, and they go, "Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. That's so tragic." And it's like, like I said, it's like the alternative was not being here at all. So, we obviously talk about it on the radio, the D word. you know, Obviously having disability has its challenges, of course, and would life be easier without? The reality is yes, but again, the alternative was not being alive. So I'm not gonna, be too sorry for it. But and even more so when you consider, I have friends who are totally blind, and they do fine with it, of course, but there's no denying that, if you have some sight, then you are a bit better off. And Fortunately, as I said, I had lost all my sight. I was fortunate that within 6 months, I did get a little bit back. You know, sort of gradual. My parents tell me it was initially light and dark, then it was shapes, and then my mum has told me a story of when. So I returned to school in May half term, but only for half days. Missed it, and I obviously hadn't been in school since the Christmas holidays. That's why I don't really count reception, to be honest, for me. Uh, but my mum tells a story of when she came to pick me up on one half day. Apparently, my reception teacher, Mrs. Cheeseman, came rushing out. Was there like, Mrs. Brennan, Mrs. Brennan, he can see colour. And, mum came running in, and I had building blocks, in front of me. And, people would, Mrs. Cheeseman beforehand and whoever the teaching assistant was at the time. And now my mum were just asking me, what colour is this block? And I was telling them because, of course, colours and stuff was something had got gained knowledge on in the first 5 years of my life. But yeah, and the sight I have left is 10% in the right eye. Uh, so that's always been the case. And that's another thing where I'm fortunate in compared to other people with visual impairments, severe sight impairments, whatever term you'd like to use. You know, my sight has been stable ever since. There are a lot of people where theirs is not, and it could go any second or it decreases over time. Of course, we again on the D word talked a lot about Chris McCausland last year being on Strictly. He had RP. I always forget what exactly it stands for. Is it retinus pigmentosa or something like that? But that is a condition that you're born with and it deteriorates over time. So as I think he had lost all his sight by 22, I think it was.
Yeah.
Again, I'm fortunate to not be in that situation. So I have been able to say watch TV still, sit very close to it, but I can watch it, for
Mm.
example.
Yeah. And
Yes.
okay, yeah. So school and college. You mentioned you went back to school,
Mm,
mainstream, and then
yeah.
was there any special adaptations? Because later on you did then go to a blind college. So what sort of adaptation did you have at the school?
Adaptations were pretty much from the beginning. I had a one-on-one TA. Reception was someone different. Uh, Mrs. Carter. I don't know. Carter was the VI teacher. But anyway, so I had a one-on-one TA in the class with me. You then had, I did have VI teachers come in as well, that's where the brailing started. That was more in year two. But it was in year two or year three where I had the same TA for a few years. At that point, it had been switching reception in what was left of reception, but then year one was someone different. And yeah, so I had one-on-one brailing. I was taught in year two. I was also taught touch typing. The decision was made that brailing was the better working medium for me, which frankly, I would say later in life and even now, I'm still feeling the effects of that because braille is frankly, it still hopefully will never entirely die, but it is a dying medium, especially in comparison to touch typing and technological uh, assistive softwares. So but as a result of the brailing being chose, I've always been a bit not as good as I would like to be when it comes to using a computer or laptop. Like I can get by, don't get me wrong, but I feel like I could be better, and I certainly think I would have been better if touch typing had been used more than braille throughout primary school, and that sort of became more of a thing in uh, secondary school, and especially when it came to GCSEs. Some were done in Braille, like maths and Spanish, but there and science. But then, religious education, English, ICT, of course. Those were done with my laptop. So, it became a 50-50. And again, that was also, well, that I had two TAs assigned to me. Obviously, they weren't in the class at the same time. It was just more they sort of in secondary school, they split between them what classes they would be with me for, So, because say one of them say was better at maths, where the other was better at English. So, like that, for
Mm.
example.
Yeah. So, were they teachers or teacher assistants or the visually impaired teachers? Were they already at the school or were they brought in for you?
The teaching assistants, I believe, were brought in for me. I know the ones at secondary school were. I don't actually know about primary school, but I believe at least in Key Stage 2 they were.
Mm.
So year 3 to year 6 they were brought in, I believe, specifically for me. I'm not sure about Key Stage 1. I think that one was sort of decided on the fly who was going to be with me. And then VI teachers were brought in. They work with the county council. They're the ones who came in, and like I said, taught me Braille, uh, taught me, would show me like how to use tactile rulers, for example, what was called Wiki Stick, which is kind of how I don't know. I think I would say how it sounds. It's like they were like sticky sticks of plastic-like material. I don't actually know what they were really made out of, but you were able to bend them and cut them up. And the idea was that you could like stick them on grass,
Alright.
so and it would give tactile on that front. So it's one of those with it was sort of a mixed bag on that front. Because I would get taken out of class to teach Braille, to teach touch typing,
Mm.
which admittedly I didn't mind at the time for sure. Because to be honest, I think I assumed that other people were doing it. Especially at the beginning, you don't realize that something is, you know, massively different. I mean, I remember, for example, in year one, so like, 6 months to a year after I lost my sight, I still wanted to be a football player, like a lot of young boys, or the other one, like a police officer. So, and I'd get told, oh, you can't, by like my teaching assistant, oh, you won't be able to do that. And I was sort of like, why? Didn't understand, what was the issue. And I often say to people, to be honest, I don't think I fully appreciated the difference now between me and others until, and again, apologies for the lowering of the tone, but, I was then bullied which started in year 2 and went all the way to year 6. So I think that's when I really became more aware of, I guess, what people saw as my shortcomings.
Okay. And so when they went on from that, so it was still able to do GCSEs, do kind of like A level results, and everything else. Um,
Yes.
what and you had like extra time, you had like being put in a
Mm-hmm.
quiet room for that kind of thing, didn't you, and everything else.
Yeah, I had 100% extra time for exams, which
Yeah.
sounds great, but and to be fair, it probably was. But when you're a teenager, a 2 hour exam turning into a 4 hour exam
Yeah.
is just feels like a bit of a headache, to be honest. And that even longer at A levels, like a 3 hour exam becoming a 6 hour exam, so it was essentially the whole day at school. And don't be wrong, it was needed and it was useful to have, so I can't complain on that front. But and then it then meant it was a bit weird, especially because with exams that long, of course, like anyone would, I needed to go to the toilet, but it meant like my TAs, because of the exam of authority, they had to essentially follow me to the toilet.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they didn't have to come in with me.
Oh my.
Uh, but that might be because they were both women. I almost wonder if one of my TAs was male, if they would have had to like be required to at least stand inside the toilet door. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a bit facetious there, but it did feel that way, especially at the time.
Yeah.
Uh, so it, and then after that, so yeah, like I said, sixth form was also mainstream school for me. They were a bit more adapted to have like their specialist department, I suppose. A special education department was a bit bigger. They were used to having more students, and not just visually impaired. They had wheelchair students. Where in comparison to say my time at All Saints, my secondary school, they did have a specialist department. I think it was more for learning difficulties. To be honest, I wasn't the first, uh, you know, registered blind student to be at the school when I joined. I was the first brailleist, though, so I guess to give an idea of how it wasn't that much of a regular occurrence. But I certainly never had an issue with either departments at my secondary school or my sixth form. It wasn't there. It was after sixth form, like towards the end of it. I did a third year, which is sort of a combination, I think, of me. I don't think I can entirely put that one on me being visually impaired. I think that one was a bit of laziness on my part and underestimating the difference between secondary school and sixth form. I think, I very much saw the free periods as, I'm going to just chill and talk to mates rather than doing some studying some of the time. So I was better in my second and third year. But then by the end of it I wasn't really ready for uni. So I then was told by my sort of VI teacher, who was still seeing me at that point, had done all throughout primary, secondary, and sixth form, about Royal National College for the Blind. Now, in
Yeah.
hindsight, there's a part of me that finds it a bit weird that she hadn't mentioned it to me while I was at All Saints, to be honest, because you can go to the Royal National College for the Blind 16 onwards, which is in I realise RNC. It's in Hereford. You do also have New College Worcester, NCW, but that one, unlike RNC, that is also a secondary school and sixth form. So from 11 till 18, where RNC at the time anyway was only 16 and above, including taking mature students, so above 25-year-olds. I believe, unfortunately, they've lost that contract in recent years. So it's probably at this point more of a sixth form and people in their early 20s. So I joined it at 19.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you actually about that. And what was the process? You mentioned obviously somebody mentioned it to you. Did your parents then come with you to an open day, and then, or was it just a transition of just go from school to school?
No, we had to go for an open day because, of course, going from Weymouth to Hereford, that's like a 3.5, 4 hour drive. So
Yeah.
we arranged not an open day initially. It was just a tour of the college. So yeah, did that. That was towards the end of my second year, I believe, because at that point I knew I was staying a third year. So I looked uh, around the college, just like a tour, a couple of hours maybe, and then I decided, yeah, okay, I think this would be a good place for me to go afterwards because the alternative to me seemed obviously people there like maybe you could take a gap year, but especially at the time I was sort of there like well, most people on gap years either go traveling, and there was no way in hell that I wanted to do that,
Hmm.
frankly. Not even from an accessibility point of view, even though I will say a lot of countries people, I often would say that, and some may not agree with this, but in my mind, I often say to people, the UK is one of the best places to live as a disabled person. And even then, it's still not perfect. But it's sort of like putting it into perspective of what it would be like in other countries. And so the last thing but even past that, I am not a fan of heat. So the idea of traveling around countries in Asia, Australia, even to which I think is fair to say is the cliche route people do from the UK on a gap year. I've got my sister did it, one of my mates did it. Yeah, I was there like, no, definitely don't want to do that. And I probably wouldn't have minded getting a job, but again, I always struggled finding the kind of work people were doing around my age because like being a waiter, be work, being a dishwasher. In reality, is it stuff I probably could have done if someone gave me the time? Yeah, sure, but
Yeah,
maybe incorrectly. There's a part of me that, in hindsight, I regret that I didn't push more for it. I was probably being a bit of a lazy teenager, but also, like I think at that point in my life, if there was one block, maybe I would try and push past that one. But once there was a second block, then I just went, all right, and got disheartened. Nowadays, I think I'm better at pushing past that first block, second block, third block, fourth block.
yeah.
But certainly as a teenager, when you've got jobs that your friends are doing, like working behind tills in a supermarket or like in a small corner shop, it wasn't something that seemed viable.
Helen. So you mentioned work there. That's a very good segue into my next question. So you currently work in an art gallery type exhibition place in Southampton. That's voluntary. Um, what was your first job or voluntary job or
Okay.
whatever?
Um, I will say the gallery isn't voluntary. I do get it. It's just I'm casually
Oh, you do
contracted
get
staff.
paid. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So it's not like a full. It's not an hour. It's not paid for hours. It's basically 0 hour contract.
right.
Uh, so, but first, not including the work experience that everyone had to do in year 10 that I did, which
Oh
I did
no,
animal care. I did animal care. But the first job I actually did was a paper round, which again I'm fortunate that the person in question looked past me being visually impaired to give me the opportunity. But it was basically my sister initially did it, who's 3 years younger than me. She then was quitting it to go and work in a cafe, and I was 17 at the time, and I suppose I wanted to do work. And I knew the route was close by us, and I was pretty confident. I was like, I think I could learn that route quite easily. I'd learned my way around my school buildings quite easily. I have a good memory as well, which has helped me. So yeah, I just got that. And first couple of times, my dad walked around with me to get me used to, you know, which house was which. But then I did that for a couple of years. I also, slightly before that, actually, I think it was, yeah, slightly before, did work at a corner shop nearby me, but it wasn't like majorly what I did is, and to be honest, at the time, because again, I was very much a lazy teenager who liked his sleep, so I didn't actually enjoy doing it at the time too much. If I'm brutally honest, I would go down for a couple of hours in the morning, like 6 in the morning till 8, and basically help them unload the trolleys that were the deliveries and put the supplements in the newspapers. So I enjoyed doing the work, but yeah, getting up early at the weekends, yeah, I wasn't a fan.
Of course not.
No, so I quit the paper round because of going to the Royal National College for the Blind. Hard to continue a paper round in Weymouth when you're in Hereford for most of the year. After that, when I went to uni, I went to the University of Winchester. I became a student helper there. So mostly I was a campus tour guide, which I know, there's in the same way there's the jokes about a blind person working at an art gallery, there's also the jokes about working, a blind person being a campus tour guide. And of course, as someone who does stand-up comedy, probably something I may talk about more there. But I very much enjoyed my time working at the uni, and I was actually, I think it was a shame that once you left, you weren't really able to continue that. I very much enjoyed it, and then there was it was a bit difficult trying to find work after leaving uni, which was probably a prospect. I think it's a mixture of being visually impaired, but also I think generally for the students coming out of uni, it can be difficult to find work. But then you also had the fact that I graduated in 2020. So, the world had shut down. And it was in 2021 that I started part-time work. Initially, it was as a supply teacher, learning support assistant at a school. And then that actually became a part-time uh, contracted hours. And I did that in total for around a year at a SEN all boys secondary school, which in reality wasn't that close to me. But my partner at the time would give me a lift, but it was like a 40-minute drive, which was a big reason for why I stopped doing it. And in hindsight, maybe I should have kept at it again. I don't know, but it was at the time, at the least, it felt because my relationship ended. So obviously there was no chance of getting lifts to the work, and I still hadn't heard from Access to Work. Somewhat annoyingly, the day I handed it in, the day
Oh yeah.
I think it was the day I handed in my resignation. I think it was the next day that Access to Work actually contacted me. So if they had contacted me before, would I have still kept at it and um, you know, got maybe taxis through Access to Work? Potentially, but even at that point as well, it was unclear whether I'd be able to stay in Southampton. With because obviously previously I'd been living with my ex, so it was unclear whether I'd be able to stay in the city and if I'd have to move back to Weymouth. And if that was the case, then I definitely wouldn't have been able to continue working in a place called Salisbury Green. Don't ask me to say exactly where it is. For obvious reasons. My map reading has never been fantastic, but like I say, it's in Hampshire, uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, no. So left that, and then yeah, it was like basically another year before I was able to get to the art gallery. I did also work for another school, and also in this time, I volunteered for guide dogs, but that mostly was as public speaking, which I've always enjoyed doing, and that came out of me when I got my first guide dog, which was when I was 17. So when I was in sixth form, in my second year of sixth form, I got him. Um, I then, school were very accommodating. They were like, okay, we'll put notices in the registers for tutors to notify the students of what to do. So basically, yes, there is a dog. Yes, it's going to be quite surreal to see a dog walking around school, but don't touch it, don't interact with it, that sort of thing. So I then suggested, well, what if I basically do assemblies for the school, you know, and basically talk to them about the process, talk to them about what not to do, and all that stuff. Which I kind of weirdly saw as not training. I guess training would be the way, but almost me testing the waters for how I'd feel about standing up in front of people. Because at that point, the idea of doing stand-up comedy is something that had been in my head for a couple of years. To the assemblies when and they would get a laugh. So, but it was also just working on my confidence because especially when I was a teenager, even though the idea of making people laugh was fun, and I enjoyed making friends laugh when normally that was through recounting a comedian set that I had, watched, and not in the sense of that I was, plagiarizing. I was just there. We were there, talking about Lee Evans, for example, and I would then go off on one of his sets that I really enjoyed, like, and just start quoting it. And friend at the time was like, "Oh, you should do stand up comedy," and that was the seed planted. But this I was 15 then, and I was sort of there like, talking in front of that many people, not sure about that. And funnily enough, now I'd say I'm at the point where I find it easier. I'm definitely better than I was, but I still would say I find it easier talking on stage in front of a load of people in whatever capacity, whether it's doing a stand-up comedy, if it was doing a guide dog talk. I find that easier than having a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned dogs there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you mentioned wild earlier when you were 5 and you got used to that. Dogs, you had 17, and then obviously, you've had two dogs who,
Yes, two guide dogs. Yeah.
yeah, and uh, this current time of recording, waiting for another. Um,
Yes.
and so when did the but because we haven't got a dog, you've got your cane with you. So
Mm-hmm.
where did the cane come in first?
So cane training I received when I was in year four, so 8, 9 years old, and again that was arranged through the county council. They helped me do routes around uh, around my school, around the local area, around town, and that just sort of continued, you know, for throughout the years. The more I wanted to do, and I was, the mobility instructor, as the position is called, changed on who was doing it. But yeah, we sort of, I continued doing it. I think I stopped a bit in primary because I actually didn't initially use my cane at all when they showed me it, and I think it's because, and I've seen a lot of people go through this at RNC who say lost their sight later in life, so like a year or so before they start at the blind college. You kind of don't want to use the cane initially because it makes you feel like a label. It makes you stand out, and even though it is a help, people feel. So I guess at 9 years old, that was sort of my process. I was in the middle getting bullied. Obviously, you can make a joke about the cane would have been a good way to defend myself, but I think in reality at the time, for me, I felt like it'd make me to have a cane around the school would make me stand out. As much as for you Star Wars fans out there, it would make me stand out as much as Mace Windu with his purple lightsaber in Attack of the Clones. So it's just one of those things that I didn't want to do it, and I wouldn't use it in public either. That changed. Actually, we were in Cornwall. My family and I would often go there. Had a caravan at a campsite from 9 till 16, and it was when I was like 9, 10 years old. So not. Oh. So yeah, when I was in Cornwall one time, I remember I believe we were in Saint Ives, and my parents stopped to look into the window of an estate agent's. Uh, I think because they were possibly thinking of getting a holiday home in Cornwall. They'd been thinking about getting a holiday home around this time because I remember them also looking in France and Spain. Never ended up happening.
Nice.
But they so they stopped, and I, as a 9 year old, 10 year old kid, you know, who also couldn't see very well, found this very boring. So I then decided, but I was visually impaired. I wasn't going to like go off wandering in a street. I think it would have been not long before this that I wandered off from my family in Hamleys and gave them a massive scare. They found me in the end. I stayed in the shop. I hadn't like, but obviously Hamleys, if anyone's been there in London, very big store. So, but yeah, so I sort of decided to like pace back and forth, like don't know how many yards, but just sort of up and down the high street. So I'd always get back to mum and dad. But then there was one point where I when I was walking back toward, I think mum or dad called me, and I went to walk back towards them. And as I was walking to them, a man passed me and he shoved me, you know, which, and basically when I got back to my mum and dad, you know, asked if I was all right. But then my mum basically was saying to me, what had happened is in my pacing back and forth, you know, without a cane. So as far as to the outside world, I was fully sighted. You know, I in my pacing back and forth, I'd got in the way of that man taking a picture of his family. So I'd like basically walked right into in the way of the shot.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
so but mum was saying if I'd had my cane, the guy would have known that I was visually impaired and that I didn't do it on purpose. I still would argue a fully grown man shoving a 10-year-old kid is a bit pathetic, uh, you know. But so there from then I started using my cane when I was in public, and then when I went to secondary school, in my second day there, I fell down. I didn't use my cane initially, even though it was a bigger school, but again, didn't want to stand out. But then I fell down some stairs outside. So then I was told, no, you need to use your cane. So I went, fine. I would argue a bit. The stairs weren't the greatest to me because they were concrete, but it was raining, so it was also slippery. But you know, it's certainly not something I regret since. Cane, I do think it's very useful, and I would always say to people at RNC who were hesitant about using them in public, no, it's a good thing to do because even if you don't find it helpful from a mobility point of view, it does serve its purpose as ironically, I guess, as a visual aid to those around you to show that that you are registered blind. So yeah, and then I continued using one. I had known I'd wanted a guide dog for ages. From I met someone with a guide dog. They came into our year two class. Again, thought at the time that was a thing they were doing around the school, but I've realised since it was just because I was in that class. And but that was when I was 7 years old, and at the time you couldn't get a guide dog until you were 16. So the cane was also the next best thing because I've always been a dog person, always been a big fan of dogs. So yeah, I knew I'd always want to get one eventually. Uh, and yeah, so as soon as I turned 16, essentially got the ball rolling. So what, turned 16 in January, and I'd applied for a guide dog in April. Yeah, so and I know since I got my first dog, that age has been lowered to 14 now, I believe, and I think that's still the case.
Brilliant. And then you mentioned jokes, you mentioned comedy, you mentioned stand-up all throughout. Um, and you mentioned a couple of comedians, Chris Portman and Lee Evans. You were kind of looking up at. So comedy, when did
Mhm.
that? When did you think, oh, that's something I would like to do?
Well, I think as I sort of touched on earlier when talking about Lee Evans, it was when I was 15 that a friend of mine said, "Oh, you should think about doing stand up," and I laughed it off because I was sort of there like, "Nah, the idea of being in front of all those people, not for me." Um, but then that planted the seed, and I guess, like I said, by 17, when I did the guide dog assemblies, the thought was in my head because I was approaching the assemblies as, throw a couple of jokes in, see if they land, and yeah, so then it just continued growing from that. And it was when I was 20, while I was at RNC in Hereford, that I did some open mic nights there. I took part in a variety show, like in house, that some students set up as well. And then really that kind of stopped a bit there when I went to uni, even though I did Winchester's Got Talent at the uni, which, as the name suggests, was just their own sort of in-house talent show. Won that the first year, and then the second year I came second,
Mm.
and then they didn't do it in my third or fourth year for whatever reason. Yeah, so that
More than
I
you.
enjoyed doing those. Thank you. I then also in my second, no, for third or fourth year did a couple of guide dog showcases, I called them. So it was where I was the compare and I, so in between acts, I would do some material, but I then also, but it was mainly, it ended up mostly being people singing. Um, I say unfortunately, it was more because I wanted it to be a variety, but just with how things worked, who I got contacts with, pretty much all the acts were singers. They were very good singers. They did very well. We had a duet. They were decent. Yeah, I tried. So that was so that's really what I did at uni, and then my plan was to do more stuff coming out of uni. Uh, you know, But as mentioned, I graduated in 2020, so there was nothing open for a good while. And then, for various reasons, when things started to open up a bit more on the comedy front in 2021, I wasn't in a position to do it. And it wasn't until after my relationship, my previous relationship ended in 2023, that I then felt more in a position to actually uh, give the comedy a proper go, which is why I tell people I've only been going for 2 years. I know I obviously did a few open mic nights like I said like 10 years ago and stuff, but as far as properly giving this a go and going to more professionally run open mic nights, getting my foot more in the door. Yeah, that was October 2023. Been fortunate enough to win a couple of things. Got Rookie of the Year at Hampshire's Comedian of the Year 2024. Won Dorset's Comedian of the Year this year. Took part of the Shaftesbury Fringe in Dorset. Also went to
Yes.
the Brighton Fringe earlier this year. So things have been getting better and better on that front. I'm still needing to work out how to use social media better. And probably need to be posting more videos, going on TikTok and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
You very recently went into social media, didn't you, with Instagram and
yeah, I created an Instagram at the end of August.
yeah.
uh, which
Yeah.
it was a lot later probably than it should have been. But again, I've
Yeah,
never,
welcome along, Granddad, to social media.
yeah, like I said, I've never been my age when it comes to social media. I've never been good at it. I've never been much of a user. Again, it kind of connects to, as I mentioned, not being best at technology due to
Yeah.
my VI teachers saying Braille was the way forward. So I think I kind of shunned technology and anything associated, like social media. Yeah. So yeah, no, it's just trying to get better at it. I get very good compliments when doing the comedy. People laugh, which is also the important thing. But people are very full of high praise, which is always nice. And so I do feel like I'm on the right track and I'm doing well. It's just I guess getting
And
more
and
into
and,
it.
and you've managed to get a few contacts with other comedians. We've had another one of your comedians come on to do D-Word once. And
Yeah, we had a
we've got
couple of
a
fellow
good
comedians. Yeah,
group of
yeah.
comedians that, if all of us with a catch station do want to do this gig, yes, and then
Mhm.
you go. So
Yeah, yeah, and I've been fortunate enough as well to get a bit of paid work again. Not big money, but it's still nice to get paid work because it's again, it's someone saying you're worth the money. So yeah, I think I've been heading in the right direction. Maybe not as fast as some others, but it's just working things out. But also
yeah.
moving area will also affect things too.
And then the radio came on last year
Yes. Well, yeah. When was it?
through
We
Zam.
started in October last year. Yeah. Well, it was through
October last year.
my employment advisor, which is through the I think, connections to the council. She had put me in touch with the gallery, but also I talked about interest in radio potentially. Again, in hindsight, I feel like I do wish it was something I'd done at uni a little bit more. To try and get involved with it. Um, but you know, no use living in the past. So yeah, got that. Saw the volunteering opportunity, as you said. Contacted Zan, who's well, essentially our boss in charge, and yeah, you were doing this show. So he was talking about the possibility of me coming on with you and seeing how it goes. I know there's the joke there of lumping the two disabled uh, people together.
Yeah.
But
How many disabled people does it take to run a radio show?
yes, apparently two. Uh,
Apparently so, yeah.
yeah. So, but no, I think it kind of works because it also kind of connects. I guess one thing I did do a podcast myself for a bit, which I have always debated bringing back. Um, but for various reasons, I haven't yet. I did it from when did I think 2022 is when I started it. 2023 is when I ended it because again, it sort of it for the time being did 75 episodes in total. So I was happy enough with that because it was a nice enough number. It would have probably annoyed the autistic part of me if it was like 78. Uh,
And and
yeah.
where was that? Is that on YouTube or is that on some platform?
Spotify. Spotify it's on. I believe it's also on Amazon. Uh, no, I think it was also on Apple Podcasts as well. Maybe on Amazon. I'm not sure about that one. I think it was definitely on Apple. But yeah, Spotify is the main
And
place.
what's it called?
Listen with your eyes.
Ah, right. That's
Uh, because it basically was a similar sort of concept to what we're doing here, Pete. It was basically people on who were disabled and just talked about their disability, talked about because I suppose the big thing for me with the show, and it kind of came from something I'd done at uni. Like so, I did a writing for radio module. I did creative writing as a whole, but the module writing for radio, I wrote a script for a radio show where two disabled people talked about their disability. So it sort of came from that. And of course, being going to RNC, most of my guests, due to my contacts, were, you know, registered blind in some way, visually impaired, severely sight impaired, totally blind. They, but I did, get other guests on as well. Had, say, uh, maybe a few wheelchair users. So I had one person on who was deaf, partially deaf. Yeah, so it was that, you know, so it was
nice.
that sort of concept because I suppose in my head it was sort of just trying to, demonstrate, disabled people have normal lives, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
We're getting to the final part. Last couple of questions.
Hmm.
Is there any um actually no, I'll do that in a minute. First question I've got for you is what are your plans for next year? For the year?
Next year, I think trying to get better at social media is a big one, and certainly using it more for the comedy. Uh, I kind of touched on moving to a new area, so I've actually recently moved into a house, and as a result, in a slightly different area of the country to where I was. So it's just sort of trying to spread my net and network again, get more, getting into the local comedy scene there. So that is a big one, really, and probably finding work is then also on there because as a result, I won't be able to be at the art gallery anymore, John Hansard. So trying to find work because despite what some people think, not pretty much all of us. I think it's fair to say all of us people with disabilities do not like just sitting at home and claiming benefits. We like doing things.
Absolutely. And the last question I've got for you is one that I've always done throughout the whole disability life. Are there any tips or advice you would give to somebody that's got the same condition as you?
I think. I mean, to be honest, I feel like this advice could probably go for anyone with a disability, not just being severely sight impaired. But I think the main thing is you, you know, you need to live your life. I think and that will come in different shapes and sizes. That's not me saying, telling you to go traveling. That's not, see the world. Ironically, it's not telling me, that's not me telling you to go clubbing. However it is, don't just, sit on the sofa, become a couch potato. If that truly is unless if that's truly what makes you happy at times, and to be fair, I don't mind. I'm more than happy to binge a series, but I don't think it's something that people want to do 24/7 necessarily. I think, there are barriers and there will always be barriers. They're not, you can't sugarcoat that. And there will be times where it is tougher than others. That's always going to be the case. But at the end of the day, I suppose these are the cards that you've been dealt, you know, but it's up to you how you play with those cards.
Oh, that's brilliant advice, I think.
Mm.
Thank you very much for coming along, Callum, and I hope you have a good Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, Peter. You have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year as well. And same to everyone else, whether you celebrate the holidays or not.
Voice. Let's go. Voice FM.